Welcome to another edition of the Heron Outlet. She is Alex Finley. He is Austin Roblard. I am Ian Heston. Guys, I hope you had a nice R&R as we took a break off from action this past weekend. Inter Miami not in action because of the upcoming U.S. Open Cup final that Orlando City is in. Their planned scheduled match for last Sunday moved back later on, the second to last game now this season. But there is still lots to talk about, especially with an upcoming game this coming weekend at Chicago in the Windy City against the Fire. And guys, let's start with that matchup. It shows it's been a long time since Inter Miami has had to pay attention to Chicago. Obviously, the first game of the year, a scoreless draw down here in South Florida. Since then, probably different directions at different times of the season for both of these teams. Early on in the season, it was Miami with the struggles, and Chicago looked like they might be in the position that Inter Miami now finds themselves in right around that final playoff spot. So instead, Chicago finds themselves towards the bottom of the standings and really looking to find anything. So as we start with this game, having this time off, I just feel like this is the right time to catch a Chicago team for a Miami team that's been struggling to find points on the road. Chicago hasn't won in their past five. They haven't scored in more than 400 minutes. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But let's address like really where they find themselves on the calendar here, because a lot of the time this season we've been talking about, wow, you're catching this team or this team at the wrong time. This seems to be like one of those instances where they're catching them at the right one.
Yeah, and I excuse me, I think that the Chicago Fire, I think it's definitely a winnable game for sure. I think Chicago throughout the season, they've been so wishy-washy with with their play style and their record across all the games. I think that with Pozuelo coming back, especially, I think it's an extraordinarily winnable game for Inter Miami, and it's a game that they need to win after dropping the last two, and especially since Cincinnati has been getting points and New York City FC has been slacking a little and not beating the teams that they're supposed to beat. So getting an away win at Chicago will be huge.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just going to jump right into the thing that I want to talk about most is
you want to go? I was going to let you do it later on. You want to?
No, I think we should just get right into it because
right,
Alex has said enough. You've said enough. They have to win this match, I believe, on the road. You're catching Chicago at a time where, like you said, Ian, they haven't scored in 4 games, and they also haven't won in over a month. It'll be a little bit, almost a month and a week by the time they play on Saturday. But the first game of the season, March 5th or 4th, whatever the day was, man, Fabian Herbers had some very interesting stuff to say after the match. It was a 0-0 draw, if I remember correctly, to start off the season. It wasn't a great start for Miami, as everybody remembers. But before I get into this, let me give you some context of the table at the moment and where both teams stand. Inter Miami are sitting in 9th place, and Chicago are sitting in 13th place, and there is a 4-point difference between them. And I'm gonna get
with
right
the game
into
in
it.
hand too. With the game in hand.
So let's just get right into it. This is the stuff that I love to talk about, I guess, because I remembered it out of nowhere when I was looking at the depth chart for Chicago. And Fabian Herbers has a podcast with Julian Gressel called the Z Soccer Podcast. I don't know if it's still going on, but it was going on at the time of this match. And I believe that in an episode prior to the match, Herbers talked about getting Higuain's jersey. And well, it's safe to say that did not happen. And because that did not happen, Fabian Herbers had a lot of choice words for Miami's DP and star striker. And not only did he have a lot of choice words for Higuain, he also had a lot of choice words for Miami in general. So to give you a quick rundown on what he said about Higuain, it was mostly F that guy. He was negative and he is not a leader. And that's not a captain I would want on my team. Simple as that. And what he said about Miami, and this is where I'm going to pull up some direct quotes if I can. Let's see here. He it's so interesting because it's so funny to look at the beginning of the season when all they did was draw. They didn't even beat Miami, and he had these words to say. Fabian Herbert said, "I feel like Miami is a team that's, in my opinion, they're probably going to be one of the bottom teams this season just because of their budget problems and the fact that I don't think they have much quality in their team, in their squad. And then if you're just on this first game, already so negative as he is, alluding to Gonzalo Higuain, and so destructive and so negative towards your own teammates, when you're supposed to try and help, you're supposed to try and lift them up. You're supposed to make them better as a leader, as a DP. And I think it's just going to be a long season for Miami and for Higuain as well. Fabian Herbers has played in, I'm not sure how many matches. I believe it's a little over 20. He has 1 goal and 1 assist. And Chicago is sitting in 13th place.
He started only 10 of those, 25 matches, starting only 10.
And Inter Miami are sitting well above them in the table with a game in hand. So there's just a lot to be said for that. I'm excited for that to come up again if it does come up again. And if not, I'm going to make it come up again because I think it's super interesting. And it's just fun to talk about these kinds of things. And obviously with the resurgence of Gonzalo Higuain, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation if Campana had been healthy and been the star striker all the way throughout. But Higuain has lifted this team to a potential playoff spot with the likes of Pozuelo. But for the most part, Higuain has been there in a lot of key crucial moments, whether it's scoring goals or not. And I just think that it's a very interesting topic to talk about, and I'm excited for the rematch against Chicago Fire.
Well, I think that stuff's good for the league, right? You want a little bit of trash talking, and let's be honest, Higuain has never been shy about showing his emotions and his displeasure with his teammates when he's unhappy. That's right. The kind of leader that he is. And if he doesn't like that leadership style, okay, well, you don't have to play here, right? Like that is, I think, a fair assessment, if you will. But I mean, the F-bombs are a little bit, whoa, man, like it's just the first game and a scoreless draw. Mind you, Chicago's had a lot of scoreless draws, especially lately. The past 2 have both been scoreless draws. They were second to last in MLS in goals scored last year. They are dead last at MLS in goals scored this year. So from a team that doesn't score a lot and have a lot of exciting moments, pot meet kettle.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I'm not sure how much to take away from what Herbers was saying and where it came from. Like you said, it was a 0-0 draw. It wasn't that chippy of a game. It wasn't something that, it wasn't like this monumental type MLS match. It was just an opening day game that ended 0-0. And just one of the many games that Chicago really hasn't scored and hasn't done much. And with Higuain, yeah, everything's right. In terms of, he can show his negative emotion. He gets passionate about misplaced passes and wanting the ball and all these kinds of things. But at the same time, you've seen the turnaround this season. And granted, he said this after the first game, but to come out with these choice words just because possibly you were upset about not getting the jersey, or maybe you didn't want the jersey after you saw that he was negative or whatever you want to call it, I just think it was a little far. And you dropping the F-bomb twice in the same 2-minute sequence on your podcast about a player with, this world-renowned stature and this kind of profile, and then to talk crap about another team in the league in which you're now finishing below to end the season. It just kind of, you look back on it and you say, wow, that, in hindsight, maybe that was a little much, but at the same time, it just makes for a fun rematch. And it's something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's giving salty from his end, honestly. Higuain has scored more goals this season than Air Bears has scored in his entire Chicago Fire career. So, I mean, that's not...
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. He only has 8 goals and 92 appearances for the Fire, and Higuain is sitting on 9 this season. So that's that.
Yeah, it's fun to stir the pot a little bit here, guys. It is, and obviously there's more important implications to this match. Like Miami needs to get a win and put themselves above the playoff line, but I think it's so fun. It's so fun.
And Chicago is also a team that had a similar situation, or is going through a similar situation than Miami had, with its star players, its designated players, not performing and not necessarily playing. Shaqiri's been sent to the bench for the past 2 games. Brisbilko as well wasn't starting. So and they're not scoring goals, right? Let's be honest. They're last in MLS in scoring goals. And you saw with Miami what happened when your Higuains weren't contributing, when you sent away another one with Pizarro and you didn't have anybody to fill there. Those are those same positions, right? Striker and attacking midfielder. When you don't have those, you can see, like for like, how much that hurts. If we bring it back outside of the drama, we can bring it back to the soccer field and show how much it hurts a team when you spend so much and dedicate those roster spots to those 2 positions and they don't provide for you. That's when you struggle. And they are a perfect example of it.
Reminds me of Toronto too, as well. They signed Insigne and Bernardeschi, but their keeper and defense it's literally killing them. That's probably the main reason why they're not going to make the playoffs, even though that they've been playing better and scoring more goals. It's their defense and goalkeeper that has been letting them down. That's called a mismanagement of resources right there. I think the squad's not really well rounded for them, and you see the same with the Fire. Shaqiri, everyone knew coming into when he got to Chicago that he was injury prone and probably not the guy you want to build around. Just look at his career at Liverpool, Bayern Munich. He was never a full fledged starter. Maybe at Lyon at times, but he was coming off the bench for majority of his European career. So to throw all that money at him in the first place, to make him the focal point of your franchise was a little naive and genuinely, I think. But yeah, I think with Miami, looking at the game now, I think Miami with Pozuelo coming back, I think it's just Miami will have the upper hand here.
And as Miami turns to this, let's turn to what they had earlier this week, a open forum for all the season ticket holders and the fans to be able to enjoy an open training at Drive Pink Stadium. Hundreds of fans were there, a nice scrimmage that the team had for them. A really great opportunity to have a meet and greet with a lot of the players afterwards, take pictures, get autographs, and a fun environment. Guys, I was out there and really got to enjoy what all the families. This was a very much a family event. It wasn't your typical La Familia banging drums, singing noise, going off with the flares and all of that. This was much more of a thank you event, and I thought at a great time of the season for this to occur. It being with these final couple of home games that are all going to happen, or two of the three are going to happen on a school night, on a work night, in the middle of the week. You are thinking about a playoff push, trying to get people excited. And the team, Phil had said afterwards in his press conference, he had said, well, we could have just had a regular Tuesday training session and it would have gone, over on the practice fields and it would have been just us yelling. For us to have the fans here with all these road games that we're having, for us to have the fans cheering us on, it added to the excitement, it added to the energy that helped training be a little bit better.
Yeah, I wish I could have been there. It seemed like a joyous time. If you guys missed it, I know if you follow us on Instagram, all of our stories were there highlighting a lot of the key moments. And one of the things that I thought was pretty insane was them letting all of the first team players do meet and greets with families and other fans. And I thought that was probably such a special moment for a lot of those people, and it just connects the fan base a lot more to the team, especially at a time in which like you said, Ian, you're making a playoff push. You've got a couple of home games remaining, and granted, they're on school nights, so you need to push people to come out to these games and support. So I think that it was a very timely decision to have something like this to put a little energy, not only in the fan base, but also in the players as well, because playing in front of people is always going to be something, whether it's a practice or not.
And yeah, but that meet and greet, mind you, guys, that's the first time that's ever happened. That's because of COVID. That is the first time that fans have gotten to really interact, get up close and personal, high five, get autographs, take pictures. We haven't seen that in this club's history because of the pandemic and everything that went along with it.
Yeah, and I just think they're taking full advantage of the moment. I genuinely think that's what Inter Miami's doing, and I think it's a great move. Again, I wish I could have been there. It seemed like a lot of fun. I know, Ian, you said that they scrimmaged, towards the end of it, giving fans, something that they would have want to see rather than just their normal practice, drills. And it's better than a regular Tuesday training because, again, training in front of your fan base is always something. It's doing anything in front of your fan base is always something. So,
Alex, in that scrimmage, Alex, they did first team offense against first team defense with a second team defense against the second team offense. They sort of split the teams along that side. So you had, Higuain versus Lowe. You had, maybe like Robert Taylor and DeAndre Yedlin were together, right? So you sort of balanced it that way. Let's just discuss tactically and like from a training perspective how that's helpful for people who are in their own rec leagues and stuff like that. Why would Phil do that instead of just put the whole team together to gel as one single solitary unit?
I think it's mainly so it can focus on certain groups, concentrated wise. I think splitting the group like that instead of having a giant 11v11 has it lets you work on the details a little bit more in certain battles and certain players, what you want them to do. If Egwene was going against Lowe, I think that would be a good battle for Damian Lowe to use his physicality and positioning a bit more, because Egwene is pretty crafty around the box. So I think that's the main reason. I also think it's probably because, like I said, I think Neville probably wanted to work on the details a little bit more. Having giant practices are good for fitness, but when you want to get into the nuts and bolts of everything, you need to, just go comb through the details a little bit more. And I think that's the main cause. You see guys like Guardiola using, just like rondos, like in small concentrated groups to work on their first touch. I think that's kind of similar of what Neville's trying to emulate there.
And they did do rondos to start training, so that was the very first half of it after they warmed up. The other very interesting takeaway from the training session was the player that they made available to the media afterwards, none other than Nick Marsman. And we haven't heard from Nick in pretty much quite some time since he got injured. So very interesting from that perspective. Obviously, a lot of talk over whether he's now taken the number one reins back from Drake Callender. All signs would appear so with making him available. Then again, Phil did not come out and say Nick is the number one guy. He always praises all keepers, CJ Dos Santos included, right? And I think CJ deserves that as well. He's an up and coming keeper and done very well. Even if Phil had come out and said Nick Marsman's the number one guy, do we believe him at this point? Because he has flip-flopped on this so much. I feel like every single time I ask him, I even said directly to his face, I was like, last time I asked you this question, you had told me Drake was the guy. And the 48 hours later, Nick Marsman, surprise, is on the team sheet. And he kind of gave a smile and he was like, no, well, Nick's going to be important for us down the stretch. So do we believe, are we going to mix and match this? Last time I asked this too, he said, this is not a position that you normally rotate. Now it seems that it is a position that you're going to rotate, or the main one that you're going to be rotating. Where do we see this keeper battle as it's going down the stretch in a surprise twist?
I think the last time we actually talked to Nick Marsman, and if I'm remembering this correctly, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, was when Erik ten Hag was first announced as Manchester United manager, or that he was going to come up in the summer of last year, or of this year, sorry. Maybe it was towards the end of last year, the last Premier League season. And I remember somebody asked him about it because he had trained under Ten Hag over in the Netherlands. So he was asked about him becoming the Manchester United manager. And that was the last time I think we ever heard anything from Nick Marsman in terms of media availability. And in terms of
actually, was it? I think maybe it was even like before that, the Inter Miami CF2 game where he started first time after his injury, or maybe there was something after that. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting my yeah. Maybe it's been a while.
It's been a long time. It was before the summer, and it was probably in the months of May or April or something like that, which is still crazy to think about. But anyway, in terms of what Phil Neville's going to do with this situation, what I think he should do with this situation, I think he put Nick Marsman back there in terms of trying to get the distribution right, because a lot of the times Nick Marsman was playing balls off to the flanks, pinging balls in over some of the whether it was the front line or the mid line of Columbus. And I think that he really, really, really respects that aspect of Nick Marsman's game. I think we all know that Drake Callender isn't necessarily all there with his distribution right now up to Nick Marsman's standards. And I think that as a team that is trying to play a certain style, maybe Phil Neville's just, using that to his advantage and saying, you know what, I can't take the risk anymore in terms of just shooting balls in over and trying to win headers. And with Higuain up there, the hold up play is not necessarily as good as it would be with Campana. It's still at the same time, Higuain and Pozuelo have had a good couple of link ups and hold up play, but with Campana there was a little different. And now you've seen a couple games without Campana and Higuain up at top, and with Nick Marsman, if he can play balls into Yedlin or to Mota or to Gregory or off to the left, whether it's Robert Taylor or anybody else there, Kieran Gibbs, and you can start an attack that way and use Nick Marsman as the first attacker, I think that that's where it's coming in. And I do think that right now, and what we've seen over the last couple of years, that Drake Callender is a better shot stopper than Nick Marsman. I can say that pretty confidently. I think that Phil Neville is really valuing the distribution. And I also think that it shows a lot of Phil Neville's trust in the defense to keep the ball in front of them that we've talked about the last couple of weeks, because the defense has done a really good job of that. I know they've lost the last 2 games, but there were times throughout the season, or through the last couple of matches anyway, where we praised the defense for playing pretty well. It's just the attack that needs to get going. And I think that that's because they haven't scored from open play in a couple matches. So I think that that's where he's leaning towards. And I think that Nick Marsman, I don't know if I want to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Marsman is the starter for the rest of the year, barring any injuries.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think we all like Drake here. He's been really good for Miami, and he's still a young keeper, so the distribution side of his game can still develop. But I think, like Austin said, I think going into some of these games where, you need some, I don't know, I think it's just a style of play. I think Neville wants precise balls in behind two wingers or fullbacks when they're building out of the back sometimes. And Marsman can give you that, although Calendar has been working on his distribution. Like I said, he can still work on that. He's only, 24, 25. So that can develop with time. Goalkeepers nowadays play till 40, so it really doesn't matter. But I think at this moment in time, I think Marsman is this distributing keeper that Neville wants at the moment. I don't know if Drake will come back into the fold maybe later. I don't know if when Miami make the playoffs, possibly. But what does this mean heading into next year too? We had this giant discussion about, you don't want a backup keeper on that, on wages like that, and Calendars, I believe in his last he's in his last year of his contract, I believe. I have to double check. So there's just a lot of up in the air stuff as well. So just intriguing goalkeeper battle going on in Miami right now.
And I don't think that this discussion negates anything that we said in our YouTube video that we put out about the goalkeepers on the Heron Outlet YouTube channel. I think that that is still a very important discussion. And this is why I only talked about Phil Neville and what I think he's doing, because in my mind, I'm probably still going to go with Drake, because I don't know how much I'm willing to pay Nick Marsman, and definitely not the 450,000 or whatever the number is annually.
But that's a conversation for the offseason. I'm talking just these 6 games, right?
Yeah, right. These 6 games, yeah, sure. You get your money's worth with Marsman, I guess, and I think that if they're able to score from open play and it comes from Marsman, then it'll seem to be worth it. But they still haven't done that. And maybe, Marsman helped out a little bit, but they still did not score. And they had a really low expected goal number. And I think they had 4 shots all game, and none of them were on target. I think maybe one of them.
Yeah, but you're missing Pozuelo. You had a less than
get that
Higuain.
too.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff going into that.
So then how much? Then that's the thing. I think that's where you have to weigh the balance. Is Nick Marsman on that deal because of his distribution worth it? Is it worth it? And I still go back to the Calendar thing and think about his shot stopping. And I say, you know what? For a guy who's younger, who's on lesser money, who you can re-sign and keep at home where he's really liked since the trade in 2020, I think that that's a no-brainer, and you save some of your capital that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this decision has anything to do with 2023. I think that this is strictly a making the playoffs in 2022 thing.
I agree.
And I would say that Nick is the more all-around keeper. Like, he is the more complete player. The question is,
I would disagree.
Okay.
I would disagree. I would disagree, because I think that Drake Calendar, like I said, is a better shot stopper.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
No, well, I think he's a better shot stopper, and I think he's more commanding.
Yeah, definitely better
in terms of, and also his retention, his ball retention, and his handling is much better than Marsman.
I think that's fair. I'm just saying.
The only thing I give Marsman is distribution, honestly.
Well, but also, I mean, I think that we're downplaying his shot stopping ability. It's that Drake's is clearly better, and I guess the question is Drake's shot stopping ability so much of a large gap that it overlooks the other deficiencies that, like distribution, like experience, which, I would say that Nick has a lot of experience in big matches, something that, Drake could learn. A situation like this, like you'd said, 24 years old, it's still kind of young. This is his first real, time for a prolonged period of time being in control back there at this level. So I think that I think that basically what you're going to get with Nick. with Drake, you had that the last game that he played where he let a couple in that maybe he shouldn't have. I don't want to harp on that too much because then you have the other games where he's standing on his head against Charlotte, where those games that he was really fantastic in. So I also think that we haven't seen a lot of clean sheets from Drake for however much, and you can say that's not his fault because he's been under a lot of pressure and he's had 5, 6, 7 save games, a lot of them actually, but we haven't had a lot of clean sheets. So to your point, Austin, if they're gonna need to find goals elsewhere, almost knowing that you're going to give up a goal a game with Drake in there, you have the potential, or I think a higher potential of a clean sheet with Nick back there, just from a steady Eddie sort of standpoint.
Yeah, I think you guys make really good arguments on both, but I think I like Marsman's distribution, but I think I'd stick with Calendar. Honestly, he's a better shot stopper. He's better on crosses. We've seen Nick Marsman kind of scramble in the air sometimes, which is not a good feeling to have, seeing that on the field. So yeah, I would stick with Drake. No reason not to. And I know
I think I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I think I think I would go with Drake if it was my decision, just because I would like to keep that going. I didn't think that Drake performed poorly enough to lose. I didn't think he lost the job. No. And so I think from that standpoint, I would have kept it going. But just from a devil's advocate standpoint, I can see why Nick could be the guy in this moment, this particular stretch.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I think it's just a tactical thing that I want to do. I don't think it's any indicator that Drake is bad or is in bad form. I think it's just, he wants something different.
So as Inter Miami is playing Chicago this weekend, there is still a lot to look at around the league. It's almost setting up to be a 3-team race for that final spot with Inter Miami, Cincinnati, and New England, both taking care of business or both gaining points over the weekend. New England last weekend, New England up to 7th now, dropping Inter Miami down to 9th at 38 points, but they have 29 games played, 9 wins. Cincinnati also at 38 points with the same number of games, albeit they're going to have a midweek game against NYCFC. We're recording this before that game, so that will also be a game in hand that Miami will have. So, NYCFC really has not helped Inter Miami except for that one win. They've had a bunch of games against Charlotte, against now Cincinnati, against New England, and they haven't picked up points in basically any of them. This is another opportunity for NYCFC at home to hopefully get 3 points, and that would be a big addition for Inter Miami. The challenge here, guys, is Miami doesn't play New England or Cincinnati again. They would still be in their own control their own destiny. And I talked to Phil about that last night, barring one slip up from Cincinnati. And that could just be a draw. If it's a draw and they win out, I mean, we're talking a 6-game winning streak. But if they win out and Cincinnati just draws once, then it wouldn't matter. Inter Miami would get it based off of number of wins, even if Cincinnati were to win out as well. So that's sort of the state of the race right now. You still do have Atlanta that's lurking, Toronto that's lurking, even Charlotte that is still hanging on, Chicago that's still hanging on a little bit. And then looking upwards, you do have probably out of reach now Columbus and Orlando. But those 3 teams, Inter Miami, New England, and Cincinnati, how do we sort of see that in the pecking order as we're heading down to these final few weeks?
I think if Miami approached this in a way, I think who was it? Ariel Laster that we talked about last time on the pod, saying, I'm at this point, I'm not worried about any other team. I'm just worried about us. I think even though technically their fate is not in their own hands, I think that you can expect Cincinnati to maybe drop some points at some point in the next 6 games that they play. Same with Miami. So for the most part, if Miami take care of their own business, I think that they will get there, and that's how they need to approach it. I think that Miami is a better all-around team than Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati has, some pretty good attackers in terms of Brandon Vasquez, who might get the call up to the World Cup. We'll see. But I think he should too, but that's a Berhalter decision that we don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, that's a whole different tangent. I think I think in terms of complete teams and what what each one of them can do and what we've seen from them. I know we've seen a lot of good from New England, but we've seen a ton of inconsistencies, especially this season. Bruce Arena hasn't necessarily gotten them to go on a streak of games in which I think they were drawing a ton of games too at one point. They were not able to find a way to win. And with Cincinnati, it can be up and down as well. I think with Miami, we've seen them go on an unbeaten streak. I think it was 5 or 6 games. And I think that they are able to do something like that again, especially with the 3 home games to round out the season. That is definitely working in their favor. So I'm going to agree with Alexi Lalas in terms of his teams in and his teams out. I think that Miami will finish in the 7th spot. I think that they will jump above Cincinnati and New England. I wish that they got to play them one more time. I will say that. I think they dropped the ball. In terms of Cincinnati, that 4-4 draw that is going to
that could be
possibly, I think I tweeted that a long time ago that could be the game that decides everything for Miami. And if they could have just held on, then they would be in a much better scenario. But right now they find themselves a little bit behind and they've got work to do, but it was always going to be like that. It was inevitable that it was going to come down to the last day. And I think it still will against that Montreal side that's been really, really good as of late. But I think that Miami do have the edge in terms of their squad, not necessarily in terms of recent form, but I think that they have a better ability to win some of these games going down the stretch, especially at home.
Yeah, I think that Cincinnati 4-4 draw was probably that killer game, but I think I agree. I think Miami, they play Chicago and DC away, and their team's not in really good form right now, especially, you get Pozuelo back, you get maybe 6 points on the road, then you win your home games, which are 3 more. I think safely they'll be above the playoff line.
That Cincinnati game is the difference right now between being in that 7th seed and where they are now in the 9th. I struggle with that because they have won so many games right at the death. Like, coming back, I think they have the most points gained in the league after the 80th minute this season. So it's tough to say like one game or two if you even want to throw Orlando in there as well as being that game. New England does scare me a little, and the reason being is the schedule works out better for New England than it does anybody else. Both Inter Miami and New England have at Chicago. New England ends the year with them, and home against Montreal. They play them a little bit earlier. So those two are like for likes. They still do have to travel to Red Bulls this weekend. They have to travel to Houston next weekend. And I think they have, they're home against Atlanta. That's the other one that they have. So a little bit of an easier path than the other one. Cincinnati still has road trips to NYCFC that will.
They play a ton of Western teams, right?
They have to travel to RSL. They have to travel to Sounders. And so I think really, if they get points in those 3 games, okay, I'll worry a little bit more. But if they drop all 3, then we're talking maybe like 7 more points they get. They'll be at 45, right at that cut line. Inter Miami would only need to win 3 of the last 6 in order to match that. So New England really needing to drop points. And like you said, Austin, they draw a lot. So the ability for that to happen probably will come into play. Those draws will not hurt Miami as long as Miami can eke out the wins, because almost definitively, I have to say, if Miami stays in this race, they will have the tie-breaking advantage because they already have the wins advantage with the game in hand. So they would really need to, if they start losing and New England starts winning, then they're just going to pull away and not be together. So if they're still together for whatever reason, Miami just naturally is going to have that wins advantage, and they will then inherently have the tiebreaker. So New England's a team right now that if I'm looking at it like that, they're going to need to drop points. Cincinnati, I think, probably will drop points, and that situation will take care of itself. Kind of like when Toronto was surging and everybody was going crazy. Are they going to make it? Felt a little more comfortable there that just things would work out. I feel like with Cincinnati, if Miami gets to that 45-point number, which we keep on talking about, and we talked about it last year too, and they ended with 41 points. So you saw right where that left you. So I think if they get to 45, Cincinnati will take care of itself. It's New England that worries me there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the big thing for the Cincinnati thing is those Western teams. I don't know why it was scheduled like that for them. I think it's pretty unfortunate.
MLS
but yeah,
weird,
that's MLS at the end of the day, I guess.
So, guys, as we do focus on the rest of the year, there is exciting news that has happened that we were projecting to happen, and finally, the news coming of Harvey Neville officially now signing with the a first team deal with the club. Obviously, Phil's son. We can get into that in just a sec. But a well-deserved contract for him. I think we all can agree. He has played well for Inter Miami too this season. A very exciting right back that likes to get high up the pitch. So let's just talk from a style of play first, because I want to give the kid his credit. This was earned on the field before we want to get into all that stuff. Let's talk about him as a player. What do we see? What do we like? Where does he need to improve?
Yeah, Harvey, I think he's a solid a right back, left back. He can play on either flank. He's definitely a player that likes to get forward, but he's also defensively sound enough to warrant some, starts in MLS. He's played in midfield at times, so he does like to maybe cut inside a little when there's room or whatnot, and try to just make things happen in the final third. As a right back, he's not the quickest, so you don't expect another DeAndre Yedlin type. He's quick, but he's not going to burn pace or anything. But he's decently strong enough as well to overlook some things like that. So yeah, he's a solid signing. Really good on the ball, technical. He can play in midfield, can play as a left back, can play as a right back. Likes to get forward, not too fast. Can get back. There are some times I will say he has been caught out of position. Watching MLS Next Pro, that he's too high up the pitch, and there's other team counters where he vacated the space. But I think playing in MLS and practicing with MLS players, I think that he'll just develop even more in his positional sense. But yeah, he's definitely good enough to be a backup in the league at this point. Starting, I don't know, but learning under DeAndre Yedlin, I think that it'll just only help his game even more.
Yeah, one thing I would say that I love about Harvey and I also don't love about Harvey is that he is an aggressive player. I think that when you talked about his strength and not necessarily his pace, but he's gonna put himself into a tackle. He's gonna put his body to an attacker, but he's also, in terms of that aggression, he's also gonna do that on the flip side and get forward a ton and possibly vacate positions where the opposition can get in behind, and that's just something that comes with time. He's a young player, but at the same time, I think he's done more than enough to earn himself a first team deal. We were talking about him getting a first team deal at the beginning of the season. That was a main talking point, his green card and the issues that was presenting for the club. And we've seen that they have not been able to bring in any wing back depth. It's not been enough. We've always been worried about it. And now at a time where the roster freeze has just set in and you have, playoffs looming, you need to make sure that you're well-rounded in case of any emergencies. And I think that Harvey does that for you. But in terms of the depth, great signing, great addition. It's something that you needed, but he also earned it as well. So I think it's just perfect timing for him and for the club to bring him up at this time. And I guess we're just waiting on his first team minutes.
He's tall for his position too, right?
Yeah.
So he does have an aerial aspect to him. I like his mind. He finds himself in positions, like you said, sometimes overthinks it just a little too much when he gets caught out. It's like he was trying to play chess and could have just played checkers. And I think that's some of the times when he doesn't when he gets caught out of position. He's not, like you said, Alex, as fast as DeAndre. So he's not able to make those Superman runs back to save things like that. But he does like to get forward as a very nice right foot to whip things in from there as well. So I like it as a signing. I think that it is a depth signing. I don't really know how much higher his ceiling is at this level. I think that he could improve. I would like to be proven wrong there. I mean, I think that he has room to grow. I just would like to see I would like to see flashes of it a little more. I've seen flashes that he can handle this. Now I'd like to see him handle it and have flashes of elite that we see here. So right, like, now make this your floor. What's the next? I like that. Let me have more of that. But that's where I'm kind of looking at it from. There was inherently and obviously the criticism that comes with it. He is the coach's son. I don't think that it would be fair to all parties if we didn't at least discuss it a little. He has made a career on his own, right? In club, he's played in Spain. He played for academies in Spain. He played for academy in England, and knew coming over here playing for Inter Miami too that it was an academy that the senior team was coached by his dad. Um, when I've seen them on the pitch, I haven't seen any favorable treatment ever, not once. So I think that we can just throw that out. In fact, maybe even he expects more of Harvey than others. So I don't really look at it as an issue there. I guess. Do you see an issue with it? Is it going to be more difficult to get him minutes? Is it going to be more difficult if he is playing better or if he's playing poorly? Is it going to be more difficult to transfer him when he wants to move on with his career? What are some of the pros and cons of a situation like this?
I think Phil Neville's been extremely professional about this, the way he spoke about it and the way that he goes about talking about his son as just a player on this team. And obviously there is a family aspect. When they go home, they're best friends, and he said that explicitly. But on the pitch, he's a player for his team that needs to contribute. And I think he has earned this right to come up. And if you look at the second team in terms of the quality and what the first team needs, Harvey Neville is the signing that you make 100% of the time. There's nobody else I'm taking. And we saw it with Noah Allen in the beginning of the year as well. And that I kind of put it on that same level. Noah Allen there wasn't any nepotism. There wasn't any favoritism. Noah Allen had earned the right to get there. And it's because what the team needed at the time. And I think that Harvey Neville is just another addition. And I think possibly if Harvey Neville had his green card in the offseason of last year, he could have been up there before Noah Allen, or maybe they were both signed at the same time. There was always those discussions. So the pros of this, I think, obviously you have somebody who's extremely comfortable in terms of playing under his dad, I'm sure. And Phil Neville takes it on comfortably as well, and he's professional about it. The cons is you do get this annoying type of reputation because of, you had the first David Beckham, Phil Neville thing, and now you have the Phil Neville to Harvey Neville thing. And it's never going to end. There's always going to be that criticism, but at the end of the day, they are professionals. They are acting extremely professional about it. We have not seen any personal favoritism other than if you want to call this contract something like that. But again, I will go back to my point. No other second team player in terms of the situation and the quality, I think deserves it more than Harvey right now. And he did get it with reason. So I think it's just about proving it on the pitch, and that's all it is. And I think that if everyone stays healthy, Harvey might not get many minutes, but that's not really what his signing is about right now. It's not about making him a starter. If that was happening, then okay, I might point all of my fingers towards Phil and say, hey, maybe this is not, but that's not what's happening at all. I think that if this was any other player, we would see this as a great signing. And I guess not great, as a good signing, as a needed signing,
as a proper signing, right?
As a proper signing.
It's a position of need and a player underneath, in your developmental team that has been playing well, that fits the position of need for this moment. And I think that from that vantage point, you mentioned the professionalism too. That goes to Harvey as well, because he's a kid still, and just starting his career. I was talking with him last week one-on-one, and everything that he said, was very on point. It was direct to the point, to the game. Talking about what he needs to do, what he's learning from DeAndre, what he and Noah see when they're, very stoic in his answers, very, very approachable and very understanding of this moment and what his role is for this team right now. He's not coming in to be a designated player right now. He's not being asked to be. And he's very aware of that. He's very aware of, why he's here. And I think that, like you had said, that, to throw around nepotism was really unfair to everybody involved, from scouting him as a player to what he's done, because he's improved a lot as well. If you just change his last name, everything is different about this, and it would be a no-brainer to bring him up right now. I understand that if you didn't know and you just saw from 10,000 feet, oh, the coach's son, I understand. But you're only telling on yourself that you haven't watched the kid yet. Because if you have watched him, it's completely deserving that he'd be there, Alex. And I just think that, like, I don't know. I get it from that standpoint, but watch him, and when you watch him, it looks different.
Yeah, and I think it comes with the territory. Inter Miami are so high profile, and they're basically the media punching bag, honestly, national and local writers alike. They just like to take snipes at the team when it's not warranted most of the time. And it's a lot of the times it's under the guise of constructive criticism, but it's not, because most of the time they're just doing it because they need a hot take or something. But genuinely, Harvey Neville is decent enough to be a backup in MLS. Don't let anyone on Twitter or anywhere else tell you otherwise. That this is coming from people who have watched almost every single Fort Lauderdale CF, Inter Miami CF2 game. We know what we're saying. We know what we're talking about. He's good enough. Nepotism is definitely not at play here. I know the optics of it look terrible, but if anything, Neville's probably harder on Harvey than any other player on the roster. So it's definitely not. He's not getting. It's not a walk in the park for him. So, and plus, if you look at Miami's roster, it fits a need. And then people will say, well, what about any other player on Inter Miami CF2? Realistically,
they don't have anybody.
Yeah,
they don't have another right back that can play that.
Not yet. Logan
Yeah.
Baptiste is there. Tyler Hall, I believe he's injured, but he's more of a central center back anyway. But they're still too young at this moment. So Harvey is there. He fits a need. He's been training with the first team for a while. I know the players are familiar with him. It just makes sense. If his name wasn't Neville, no one would be talking about this genuinely.
Do you guys remember when we did the 6 players that should be brought up for Inter Miami CF2 last year? Harvey Neville was on every single one of our lists. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he was there from last season, and I don't think anything's changed. And it was just about the green card, and I think there was always going to be a headline. There was always going to be a headline. There's nothing you can do about it.
So he did play for Inter Miami 2 against Toronto. We'll see if that continues with the loans back and forth. Noah Allen did as well. George Acosta did against Toronto. I found that interesting. I got the chance to really take it in last week and dive into some of the MLS guys that were playing in that game. Acosta had a good game. Mabika had a good game. It was a 4-1 loss. That's very deceiving. Inter Miami had come back to tie it at 1-1 in the 73rd minute. Gave up the game-winning goal literally 2 minutes afterwards to the second, I think it was, and then just had a complete meltdown at the end, a red card, a penalty. The last couple minutes just got a little out of hand. They are still very much in the mix. We talk about this playoff race for the senior team. They're in a big mix for the MLS Next Pro team too. 2 through 7 is only separated by, I think, 6 points. With some teams have 3 games to play. Inter Miami does have that game in hand, but it's going to be very interesting. If you like drama, almost all of the teams that are in this playoff mix for MLS Next Pro play each other on the last 2 games of the season. So you're going to have a lot of head-to-head. Basically, nobody controls their own destiny. The games are on ESPN Plus. They're a lot of fun. And you do get to see that development. If you watched maybe a game or 2 earlier in the season, you remember a name, maybe 2, Schneider Borgelin, CJ Dos Santos in goal. Some of those guys. Now take a look at where they are now, and you can assess sort of what you've seen and the improvement over it. As we look into this playoff hunt for them, Darren Powell's, the head coach, has downplayed the importance of playoffs, saying that it is important a lot, but wanted to still focus on player development, make sure that they don't lose sight of guys like Harvey Neville, of guys like Noah Allen getting to the first team, but also keeping guys like George Acosta fresh and the ability to come back into the MLS Next Pro squad when they need to. Where do you fall on the line of prioritizing playoffs where only the top 4 teams make the playoffs versus still doing a player development plan? Does one have to drop so that another can succeed?
I fall in a weird territory here because on wherever the spectrum is, I think that competitive nature is a huge part of development, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of downplaying a playoff race for Inter Miami CF2. And I know that MLS Next Pro, after leaving USL, we just talked about it briefly a little bit before the show. It's a different league now. It's not a league where you're playing against individual organizations who are not a developmental team. And you're playing against a ton of different developmental teams now, week in and week out. But I still think that for these young kids to prolong their season, to keep it competitive, fight for wins, and get themselves into a playoff spot and understand the experience of what it's like to have high pressure situations, I don't think that it's a great thing to necessarily downplay the importance of what this playoff race is. And I know that there are other aspects in terms of development that you have to focus on, and keeping players fresh for the first team and developing young players like Harvey and Noah who aren't necessarily getting all the first few minutes they may want. I get all of that. I understand it. But I think that a key part of development is a competitive nature. And you talked about it with Drake Calendar. Experience. That's another thing. I mean, these guys can gain experience in MLS Next Pro in high pressure situations where they need to win games to make playoffs. And that is a it's a situation that you want young players to be in so they understand what it's like growing up and developing as players. So for me, I fall in a weird category because I understand what Inter Miami CF2 is doing. I understand what Darren Powell is doing. I understand what the academy is doing and what they're saying. And they've done a great job. I mean, I cannot downplay anything that they've done. I think they've been phenomenal. I just wish that I could hear a little bit more from them in terms of, yes, we are going to fight for a playoff spot and it is going to be you're going to be one of our priorities. I would like to hear that just because I think it would be good for the players.
I think that it is a priority. I think it's a but. It's a it's a priority, but player development is still the purpose of this program.
Yeah, and I think, I know MLS Next Pro is weird because you've got teams like Rochester that are basically, professional. Yeah, they're professionals playing against like 17, 16-year-olds developing, and it's really weird. And I know they have to flesh out some of the kinks of the league, but it's it's a development league, and then it's just weird situation going on there. But as far as the playoffs go, yes, they're important, but at the same time, these games are just to get players minutes, and it's extraordinarily good for MLS teams because you get some of the guys from the first team that can go down to MLS Next Pro and just get some minutes, even though they're like 30 playing against the 17-year-old. It's funny to see, but I don't know. The league does serve its purpose, but it's just something you have to work out because it does get.
Well, and another chance at a playoff run to hopefully get some more silver, or what's the name of the trophy, Austin, that they won?
The Breezeway Airlines Carolina Challenge Cup. Don't you forget it.
The Breezeway Airlines Carolina Challenge Cup. All right. I'll have to remember that. I keep forgetting. So as we close the show, guys, another big trophy just starting, another big competition, the biggest competition in the world starting this week with the UEFA Champions League getting underway. We follow it across the pond. My Tottenham Hotspur got to represent. Austin, you're United or not in. Alex, you're Everton not in this year, but I still get to watch. So guys, as we start to focus on the Champions League and love what that competition is all about, some storylines that we're going through. Real Madrid, obviously the defending champions, and everything that goes on with that. 5 German teams, I believe, for the first time ever, with Frankfurt winning Europa League. So we'll see how the formidable Germans do. Obviously, your stalwarts in Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Spurs, the 4 from the EPL. What are some of the things that we're looking for? And we'll get some predictions before we go.
I'm looking for the Marseille team to beat Tottenham today. No.
You're killing me, Small.
No, I can't talk any crap right now because obviously Manchester United are playing on Thursdays this year. So no, I think it's the most fun competition in the world. And one, I don't know if anybody here is going to be listening to this, but the CBS Sports Golazo show is something that I always want to have on because I love the little whip around coverage and stuff. And I think that it's added a new element the last couple of years to watch all these games pretty much simultaneously. And yesterday there was a good slate of games, a good slate of goals. Mbappe and PSG, it was that the pass, the little dink over from Neymar off the volley. And the Americans too. That's another aspect that I love about Champions League now is watching, someone like Weston McKennie score, watching a 30-year-old American keeper play for an Israeli side.
Maccabi Haifa, I'm high.
Yes, I love those stories, and that's just obviously my American bias, but it's become such a huge thing now in terms of the American soccer culture is watching players in the Champions League, and maybe now with Tuchel gone, we'll see a little bit more of Christian Pulisic too.
Yeah, I think I was watching all of the games yesterday. Chelsea losing to Dynamo Zagreb was the highlight. That Chelsea team is and they spent what 300 million on defense, still letting up goals, still no cohesive system. We saw earlier today they sacked two goals, so going after Graham Potter now, which sucks for Brighton because they've been playing really good soccer, only for a big six club to come snipe that up and kind of ruin it, only for him to get sacked in 18 months anyway. But moving on, yeah, the Paris Juventus game was really great. Mbappe, Neymar on form. Messi didn't really do much, really. Yeah, Juventus kind of man marked him the entire time. Real Madrid doing Real Madrid things. They did end up drawing into the half. Like they didn't score in the first half, so a little bit of worry there, but they ended up getting through. Man
Celtic
City.
had a great shot off the post in the first half.
Yeah,
That was really worrying.
That kid's been with them since their academy. He signed with them when he was 17, and he's now the captain. I mean,
wow.
I was
Imagine
amazing.
he would have scored that. Oh, that would have
That's
been
cool.
nice.
Yeah, and City taking care of Sevilla, Milan Salzburg drawing, which is surprising. Milan looked really good in City. Shakhtar Donetsk.
City looks terrifying right now. I mean, City looks
Yeah,
absolutely terrifying.
Holland is.
They had an XG of 4.3 in that game, and so they were expected to score that much. They could have made it that much worse. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen an XG of 4.3 in a Champions League game before. Oh my lord! And it was up against Sevilla. That's a La Liga side. It's not up against
Yeah, but Sevilla, they're in
FC. No offense, like.
Sevilla, they're in really bad form at the moment. Just I was watching them against Barcelona the other day. They just couldn't really get anything together. Even though Isco, he did sign for them, and yeah, it's not really working out for Sevilla. So I expect them to drop into Europa League kind of soon. Yeah, there's a slate of fixtures today as well. Barcelona play Tottenham, Liverpool, Napoli, Inter, and Bayern Munich should be really interesting, honestly. And yeah, just Ajax, Rangers, Frankfurt Sporting. They're all on CBS or Paramount Plus, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said I took the plunge this year. I got all of them. It's really like when you get all of them and you can watch every single game whenever you want. It's like it improves your viewing experience a lot. Commercial over, I guess. But guys, let's do some predictions. I'm gonna go out on a limb and start us off. This is the year for PSG. It's the year they finally do it. I've got PSG over Bayern in the final.
Wow.
I think this is the year PSG finally gets it done. I want us to start off hot.
I'll start off even hotter as a Man United fan. I think Pep Guardiola and Man City get it done. I just think there's no stopping this Man City team, all around the most balanced team that we may. I mean, in my generation personally, that I probably will ever see, with Haaland playing the way he is, and they can just plug and play literally any attacker, any midfielder, and any defender at will, and it's the same style. It's perfect. I think they finally got a striker that they needed, that Pep Guardiola needed. I mean, you look at the goal that Haaland scored to start off the match, the pass from De Bruyne across the middle. It's just that simple. And I know everyone's saying Haaland's scoring tap-ins. Haaland's is only scoring tap-ins, and he's just in the right positions. Yeah, well, you need a striker to get in the right positions, and he does it perfectly. That's exactly that's all it's about. And I think that if this team stays the way they are, I just don't see how any other team in the world beats them.
I agree. I think especially in the league, they've gone through adversity already. Newcastle game 3-3, that was they went down, I think twice, and they managed to come back and draw that game. Same thing with Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace went up early, and then, Haaland rained his hammer down and scored 3. So I think that, every time Man City has been kicked out, well, they've been kicked out of the Champions League is because they've folded in an important moment. So watching them in the league, they're finally going through adversity and finding a way to fight back and climb back into things. So when they go on their Champions League journey, that's going to be especially important, in the later stages when they meet, when they meet another team like, I don't know, like Bayern Munich or I'm not going to say Liverpool because generally they don't look as strong as they've been in previous years. PSG, Man City, that's if Man City were to play PSG, it'll be a really interesting game. But both teams are probably both squads, PSG and Man City. I think both squads are equipped to win the Champions League this season. I think they've retooled, they've gotten in good players to continue that what they're trying to do. Mbappe stayed for PSG, and over there in Paris, Christophe Gaultier has really implemented this like system where it's basically the front three of Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe doing the offensive work, and the rest of them just defend pretty much. So really interesting to see. But yeah, then we'll see how it goes in the final, which is not until months from now. So definitely gonna be interesting.
Both you have City and I've got PSG. Is that where we're going? Okay. It's gonna be amazing to me that Haaland's not gonna be at the World Cup too. The Norway isn't at the World Cup. The best player in the world right now not going to be there. It's just really something else because and they blew it, right? Because they had to beat like Latvia with the second to last game, I think, if I remember right. And Turkey jumped them. So they're not in the World Cup. That's going to be crazy with no Haaland. He'll be watching just as much as we do. That's crazy. But we'll leave it there. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, review, all of that fun stuff on YouTube, on Instagram. Again, on our Instagram stories have all the action, all the players meet and greet from last night at the open training for Inter Miami at Drive Pink Stadium. Follow us on Twitter at the Heron Outlet. She is Alex Winley. He is Austin Robillard. For our producer, Andres, I'm Ian Heston. We'll see you right back here this time next week.